So how about we just kick things off? So, in Lakesh and Veritas.
In Lakesh and Veritas.
Welcome to the Of the Sun SUNCAST podcast, where we cover topics that are focused on expanding ourselves and humanity into becoming the frequency of oneness and truth. And we're coming live from the frequency, attuned to one mind. We have LaOta of the Sun, who is the guiding force and the architect of the vibrant organism known as Of the Sun, who is providing Of the Sunners wisdom and guidance to be the truth and move into oneness. And I am Tarvars of the Sun, certified instructor and practitioner of the Sun modalities, and creative director behind Of the Sun's artwork and programs. So we greet you all in Lakesh and Veritas with honor, respect, and gratitude.
Honor, respect, and gratitude to our audience today.
All right, welcome. So if you tuned in last week, and by the way, welcome to anyone who's chiming in. If anyone tuned in last week, we covered the topic regarding being motivated by outside influences, and where we think we're making choices that are motivated by our free will and our personal desires. However, the reality is that we are making choices that are based on something that's systematically and strategically placed in front of us, which keeps us within control of an outside force. So, in essence, our buffet options are limited. We don't got many options, It's not appetizing. So, we're here to expound some ideas and maybe present a different buffet to choose from.
So I'd like to start today with calling for truth. Shall you join us? Join us, and shall we call for the truth? Shall we call to hear the truth today? Shall we call to see the truth? Let's see the truth every day. Shall we call to speak the truth, to have the courage to speak the truth? Shall we call for the frequency of truth to come into our experience and permeate our lives? Shall we have nothing less than the truth? Which is very poignant for our topic today. It is very clear, and many studies have been done, that the decisions we make that we think are logical and practical in the moment were already made before the question was even asked, because we already are programmed a certain way. So scientists have done studies, and brain waves have been calculated, and we see that someone will ask the question and the answer will already be there before the person has even heard the full question out, because of a pre-programmed understanding about things. Those who are aligned with certain ideologies or certain thoughts will already be pre-programmed to respond a certain way, and none of that comes from the person. All of that comes from a pre-existing experience, and this is insinuated into our culture and into us, and we are predisposed to these ways of thinking. Like, we may think, I really want to be in accord with the government. I really want to support the government and anything the government says. So if they say to me to go do a thing, or to not go do a thing, or to have a thing done to me, or to inject something into me, I'm in accord. So the answer is, you're asking me if any government agency, if I am in accord with them? Yes, I'm in accord with them, because that's my pre-programmed understanding that I was brought up with in my family, and this is what I'm in agreement with. So you never really had an opportunity to decide, because you were already pre-programmed in that direction. So what we think is free will is less free, and not really our will. It's someone else's free will. Do you see that?
Yes, most definitely. And I was sharing with you earlier about this experience regarding food. So you have a couple of key words here: pre-existing experiences and pre-programmed understanding. And I'd like to speak about this idea regarding diet, and how the idea of what we're eating, what we're consuming, specifically the idea of parasites, and you touched on it, with these ideas of programs, it can be linked over to the entities that we have attached to us that's influencing our behavior. Eat this, don't eat that, and I saw real time an experience where and it was actually in a child, where the child didn't want the greens or something healthy because it was pre-programmed with parasites, or the pool of, I shouldn't have that. So again, there's this idea of it's not, the child isn't really making the choice. It's something else that's motivating and inspiring the decision.
Yes, because life chooses life.
Of course.
Anti-life chooses anti-life. So if we fill a body up with anti-life, anti-life then becomes the dominant force and chooses the next thing. It's like, none of that life for me. I'll take anti-life, processed, programmed, barbecued, and with plenty of sugar on it.
Smothered.
And so then every choice from that point, if we fill our children with dead, processed, genetically modified, unhealthy food, then they then become programmed to accept and want what they've been given. And so the choice of freedom is gone, because what inhabits them, the parasites and the microorganisms that live off of the programmed, processed, genetically modified food, the low vibrational food that does not support life, that is anti-life, is in control of the body. So when you don't wonder, why am I getting up at 3 in the morning and asking for ice cream, and thank goodness there's a Walmart that's open at 2 a.m. I can go get a pint of chocolate ice cream and smoke a cigarette on the way and come back and dip my chips into it.
That's disgusting. That whole array. That's parasites all day.
It's the same thing on the spiritual side. It's the same thing on the physical side. Everything is everything through all dimensions. So if we make choices that are anti-life, that are against life, then we lose the freedom to make choices for life. So we want to have this understanding, because the conscious understanding of this conversation today could make you actively, not robotically, but actively say, I'm going to eat broccoli. I might only eat one little
one floret.
I'm going to start today, and I'm putting my parasites down. You will not win.
One step at a time. It's all about the first step. So as you were speaking, I was thinking about this from another face of the geometry, right? Ancestry, and the control and the influence that's from those who have came before us, how it's emanating through our DNA, and it's again pre-existing experiences or programs that are influencing our now. And we think it's us. We think we may want to, for example, pursue a certain type of career path, but that's what everyone in the family did, or this is what everyone in the family ate. This is the type of person that everyone in the family dated. So are we really making our own choices and decisions, or is it again something else influencing us?
It's the same. The computer and the way that things are marketed is the same program. So you only see on the computer the things that you're already pre-adjusted to seeing.
That's right.
So this is exactly the computer. Excuse me. The computer is, in fact, an example of what takes place.
Yes.
You know, so the computer was designed to emulate the brain. So the computer selecting and editing and making sure that we don't get all of the information, but only the information we're in agreement with. It's the same way that everything is done. So if we back out of that, and then we see our family preferences, our dietary preferences, the way my mother put her cans up on the shelf. Do you put your cans on the shelf the same way? Do you have the same understanding? When you make a pot of greens, does it have to have the same things your mother had in it and her mother had in it?
No freedom for remixing.
And this is something that I often say, because I also have been a victim of my own genetics and my own DNA. So I have had illnesses that I've recovered from, but what I found in that process, and I hope this may help you, is that if you eat what they eat and you think what they thought, you get what they got. So there's a real argument here to separate yourself and strive towards your own original thought.
Like Veritas, sending you the frequencies of oneness and truth. I got a sneak peek for you all. So as some of you already know, LaOta of the Sun, she has released a new book, Call for the Truth. And to accompany this book, we have the Call for the Truth divination cards. So I'm working on the design right now, and I'd like for you all to see this. The cards are layered with information. It's layered with the corresponding chakra. You have the numerology. You also have the sacred geometry, also known as the platonic solid. And then we have the frequency or the idea associated with that area. So here we have fear. And this quote from LaOta goes, "Do the thing you fear, and the death of fear is certain."
You really want. If you could separate yourself out from whatever the dietary things were in your life and say, well, what do I want, and what evidence do I have that this food that I am currently eating, that was not my choice, that was implanted in me in upbringing, what does it do? Let's look at my relatives and see, what did it do to them? Do I want a different outcome? Then I'm free now to make a different decision. The thing that is most deadly about these things is that they are invisible and we are unconscious of them. So we don't actually know how we feel about everything. I think it really is pervasive in the idea of what people think about being rich or being powerful. There was a study done, this was a real study in Mexico City, where the government wanted the people to have more nutrition, so they wanted to encourage people to eat brown bread that had more nutrition in it. And the people didn't want to eat it because they thought that rich people ate white bread. So the government of Mexico made a commercial with the first family being served at a table brown bread. And then the sales of brown bread went up. And I have seen this happen in other countries too, in Africa and other places, where there's a perception of what rich people do or what the powerful do. And so the person has already decided, then this is what I must do. You know, if they eat meat, I want to eat meat. If they eat meat once a day, I want to eat meat 3 times a day. If they're eating white bread, bring on the Wonder Bread. So that is the same principle.
Yeah, so that's interesting. Collective perception being swayed by those in power or those of status. And we had a little convo about this idea even with clothing. Someone mentioned to you, because everybody's familiar with polo, man on the horsey, right here, wearing a white shirt and a polo, and someone says, "Oh, you know how to dress, you have style," because of the emblem, because of the status. So again, it doesn't matter even if the person's wearing wonderful looking clothing and it has no name brand. It's just the association collectively in the minds of the people. Oh, this represents high end, so I'm gonna perceive you. If you have this, I'm gonna treat you with a little more respect than the next person. And it's so
I got the
such an
sign off.
insidious
You got on it was a plain, unadulterated plain T-shirt, but it had a logo on it which I didn't even know it had, and I got some status. I got some high fives and some pats on the back because I had on a random.
Now, mind you, you can get these things from Ross on clearance for like $8. I'm just saying. But again, in the person's mind, this is what they respected. So it really, like you said, we don't know what we think about a thing.
We don't know what we think, and we also, whatever we see, we think whatever we want to think. So we're not all seeing the same thing. So when someone sees me, they can have many different thoughts about what they're seeing. And when someone sees you, it's the same thing. So this is all based on their own invisible, unconscious programming that they think is theirs. So much of what we agree with, we don't actually agree with. For instance, many of us, because we live in a country that requires insurance, many of us have insurance. It is required by law. So our whole country is in accord with insurance. Insurance is a system of betting on the wrong thing will happen to you, and that you should be fortunate and grateful that when you make the wrong thing happen, you have done something in effect to prepare for the wrong thing that you helped happen, that you made manifest. So you agree, and your government agrees, that something terrible is going to happen when you go travel, so you got to get travel insurance. And so you pay for the travel insurance, and then you look at the forms, and then you pay every time you go, and then you do it again, and then eventually maybe something happens and you're so grateful that you thought about paying for the eventuality that you made happen in the travel situation or in the car or in the house but think about who really benefits from the millions and millions and millions of people who are not having accidents, who are not having traveled, but you have bought into the percentage, a small percentage of the ones who do have it. You have paid for them over and over and over and over again, and you're buying into it and you're happy to do it. But is it your thought, or is it one of the many things that someone else is thinking for you? You feel like you have a hand up your back?
That's literally the case. This is such a beautiful articulation of mental manipulation, utilizing the power of our minds, our will, to create an experience. It's magic. Well, literally, they're puppeteering. Yeah, do this thing. So one of the things that comes to mind is, you said this is primarily happening unconscious, because it is. We don't realize that we are inundated in this type of behavior on so many different levels. And we've examined family, we've examined the different institutions and the political systems, even when it comes to capitalism and the idea of advertising and pretty much every level, but we're still unconscious to it. How or what would you recommend for individuals to bring this into their consciousness? Like, what are some like little entry-level steps that they can do in like real time to become self-aware of these type of things and flip the switch?
I think one of the things that I think you will find very interesting, entertaining, and surprising is to look at a picture. Look at a picture of me, or look at a picture of Tarvars and see what you think. And see, where does your mind go?
What do you think of me?
You know, where does your mind go? What is the automatic pre-existing conclusion that you have already come to? What have you already decided that preempts you from getting the next thing? Just look at each person, look at your partner, look at your mother, look at all the different people, and look at the pre-programmed ideas that are unconscious and invisible, that come forward. I'm making you laugh. You're thinking about something?
I'm thinking about many things. I'm thinking about how when we even walk down the street or encounter people in the store and we have these preconceived ideas about them, and we're already painting pictures of their story and who they are, and this whole fabricated sandcastle, and it's based on what? And then, of course, what it's doing is blocking a potential experience that we can have of connectivity.
And freedom.
That too.
It steals our freedom. It steals our soul certainty. We no longer are free because we're already inundated with the thoughts and programming of the culture. For instance, imagine that you are walking into a store and you see a woman with 6 children, stair-step children, like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and she's struggling at the door, and she's trying to get groceries or coming out of Walmart, and you have a thought, and it may not be of joy and light. It may be a thought that somehow she has done something that you're not in agreement with. That the idea of reproduction is not a glorious idea. Or that the idea of supporting and committing your life to raising and taking care of souls is not of the highest understanding. It is possible that you had a thought that was not like that. Would you say?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is a part of what has happened to women. This comes into the idea of bringing back the divine feminine into our world. How many times do we see a woman who's 50 years old and decide, well, she's not going to have what a 20-year-old could have, or she has children, so that makes her less worthy of my attention, or more worthy of my attention. Think of all of the bias and all of the negative that comes about from these pre-programmed thoughts that have nothing to do with reality. They have nothing to do with reality. So especially when we look at women who look a certain way or fit into a certain category. We see a woman who's 60 years old and she's got on her arch support shoes and she's got her basket and she's pushing her groceries, and we have a certain understanding of what we think that experience is for her. It may be, but it may very well not be. We may have limited her, and the weight of the millions of people who have seen her in her life have limited her like rocks on her as well. She may actually be stooped over and unable to really walk because of the weight of our thoughts and decisions. This is a serious understanding for us to have, and we can free ourselves just by looking at somebody and seeing what we think. It's easy to look at youth and beauty and be positive. Not so easy with things that we don't know if they're positive. Are we contributing to the pain and suffering of another because of what we think? Yes, we are. So this is a very important understanding for us to have. This is a way that we can begin to change our own thoughts, and we encourage you to think about, especially how you think about how you think of women, how you perceive women in situations with children. How much value do you give the ones who reproduce life? How much understanding do you have of how that should be supported? This is very important.
From a masculine perspective, men, if you're watching, how we think or perceive women when we're walking down the street. You know how it is. Hey, what's going on? You know, we break a neck. And where did we get this level of thinking from? Where we have sexualized, over-sexualized, or looking at them as an object. You know, putting this type of thinking in check, because it wasn't always so. We all came from mothers, and we have sisters and cousins and siblings who are all female, who we are not perceiving them in that way, but somewhere along the lines of our growth and matriculation, we've been conditioned and programmed to just hone in like a horse with blinders. That's the only, or that's the box that we perceive them in.
As if there is nothing else. As if interesting, fascinating, productive, and significant being cannot exist within the opportunity of having grown towards time and having reproduced children and having added to our world what could be greatness at any moment. So you are encouraged to think of your own perceptions of how you invisibly and unconsciously and without even forethought, and certainly you don't do it with malice, it happens automatically. You're already in that decision. You see a person, you're already in the decision about who they are, why they are, and now you have contributed to the weight of the lie about them that is crippling our entire society. We can all be greater than we currently are if we call to be. You are encouraged to call for correction, to go to sleep at night and ask for the creation of the consciousness of correction to come into your experience and correct whatever is out of blueprint, whatever takes you away from your own highest and greatest good. We thank you for joining us today.
Yes.
In Lakesh.
In Lakesh.
And Veritas. With honor,
respect,
and gratitude.